I got into tattooing portraits because realism has always been something surrounding my life. Everything I did when I was young always was inspired by a realistic artist, Bob Ross, a few others. And when I got into the tattoo world, one of the first few magazines I picked up had Paul Booth's work in it, and I think maybe even Bob Tyrrell at the time. So I saw their stuff, and Tom Renshaw, and I thought that was remarkable, and it was things that I didn't know were possible on skin. You know, I was so used to the traditional tribals and butterflies, you know, so I saw that, and that piqued an interest in me and that I wanted to do, so I just have been practicing ever since, and that's been 17 years now. The difference between realism and portraits, realism is anything that's real. It can be realistic. It can be a photograph of something. It can be a chair. It can be a banana. It can be anything. Whereas a portrait is obviously usually of somebody's face. That term can be broadened out a little bit. I usually call a portrait being somebody's head. So right now I'm working on the Daft Punk tattoos, or I would call those a portrait of the members of Daft Punk, even though you can't see their face. So what I look for when setting up a portrait or getting a portrait ready is shadows, contrast, textures, things like that, things that can stand out. So that's why a lot of the times that I'm not a huge fan of tattooing babies, just because it's there's not a whole lot going on. A lot of the babies look very similar. It's a lot of smooth skin. I like things like tattooing wrinkles, tattooing high contrast, like something where there's heavy shadows, heavy highlights, things like that. Usually you're not going to capture that in a lot of baby photos. If I'm tattooing a famous person, then I feel like I have Google at my disposal, or a plethora of websites where I can go through and do some research and try to find the best possible photo I can. Whereas if somebody brings me a family member's picture, I'm only working with what I've got. So I can upload that to my iPad. I will mess with it in Lightroom and other photo editing apps and try to get the most possible detail out of their pictures, like I said. Whereas in contrast to celebrities, I just try to find the best looking picture. Again, going back to like something with heavy shadows, heavy highlights. Whereas if it's a family member, you're working with what you've got most of the time. I don't mind using references even if they're already heavily used. If it's a great photo, if it's an iconic image, I think that's just fine to use. On the other hand, if I'm doing like a celebrity portrait or a portrait from somebody from a movie or something that I can actually go through the movie and still frame it and take something out of there, then I'll do that. Even though it's a photo reference and nobody's taking somebody else's work, people can still say that you're copying somebody else's work, even if it's a portrait, right? Even if you're using the same exact reference, they'll be like, oh, well, so-and-so did that already. Or it's a lot more easily comparable if you were to hold two artists' work up next to each other, which isn't a bad thing, but I think it's just nice to have that unique image, So my client sent me a couple of reference photos of the Daft Punk tattoo that we're doing today and tomorrow, and I did my own research and I tried to find a few of the ones that I liked as well, but I ended up going back to what he picked. So he did pick a good reference. If he didn't, I would have shown him the ones that I went through, and we would have discussed and we would have found the best one. Since he did pick a good one, it was easy for me to, at that point, just Photoshop it how I'd like to fit the body, and then I brought the shadows down quite a bit, bumped the highlights up a bit because they're shiny helmets, so you want these highlights to stick out a lot. I'd want to use a lot of white, and that's what we're gonna do. I think I started to do the micros because I thought it was going to save a little bit of time, and not even just that, but I could focus more time in a smaller area. Instead of trying to fill up an entire panel in a day, I can focus my entire day on something smaller, so I feel like I'm getting a better result out of it. It started at a convention where I only had a limited amount of time, so I could only do a small portrait during that day. So we did, and then as soon as I did that one, somebody else came up and they said they wanted one, and somebody else said they wanted one, so it started to be my thing, I guess. I choose black and gray over color because typically, from my experience, black and gray heals a bit better. It doesn't hurt as much. Typically, it doesn't take as long. A lot of times, color, when it heals, it might not be the same color as when you first put it in, especially with everybody's skin tone. Everybody has a different skin tone, so it may distort the color a bit. Like if you've got a little bit of yellowish hue in your skin and it goes over blue, it might turn it a tinge green because that's how colors work. Or if it's black and white, it's gonna just be a different tonal value, right? when I approach it, it's usually from the bottom to the top, darkest to the lightest. So I'll work at the very bottom and I'll do my solid blacks, go up and I'll do my midtones, and then I'll come back and I'll do my lighter tones, and then I'll work my way up, do my blacks, do my midtones. I might work my way down, do some lighter tones, and I'll eventually work up to the very top. Finish off the stencil. Most of the things are in there, but I still need to do a lot of shades, so that's when I'll go back and fill in what needs to be filled in. Wipe it down, take a quick break, and put in some whites. I did one recently of Danny DeVito from Always Sunny in Philadelphia. That was pretty fun. That character is fun, so I like to do fun characters, things that are, people have fun with. I enjoy doing family members as well, but like, just celebrities are a lot more fun. Things like from funny TV shows or things like that. I did one of myself. That was pretty interesting. That was kind of crazy. I don't have a whole lot of pictures of myself, so I thought about taking some when he got in for it, but I mean, we already had 2 good ones that Inked had take. I don't think that part ever left my brain where I'm like, oh shit, I'm tattooing myself. I did disassociate myself from it very well to be able to do a good job, but it's a face that I've seen more than anybody else's face, so I don't know if that helped or hurt me. It was interesting nonetheless. I had somebody joke around. They said they would get a micro portrait on their face, and then I was like, if you want to, let's do it. Let's go. And they're like, no, I'm just kidding. I just wanted to get your attention. I'm like, okay, but I would do that. That'd be sweet. Another thing I wish I learned when I started this was, again, going back to lights, shadows, and things like that, because I think it helps a lot. Once you know light and where it hits on the face, it's just, again, going too light might be one of the bigger ones to work on, because black and white and color, they both tend to heal a bit lighter. So if you go too light and your portrait heals up, it's going to look very washed out. So you have to go dark enough to where it's going to heal up and it's going to look good, but you can't go too dark, otherwise it's going to look it's going to be off. I would try to study up, learn anatomy, learn facial structure, dig into shadows and light, shadows, highlights, and light sources. And if you're into color portraiture, look up color theory. Try to gain as much knowledge as you can, because it's only going to help you. It's only going to take you further. YouTube is wonderful. You don't have to look up tattooing videos to learn about tattooing. You can learn about art videos, you can learn about color mixing, you can learn about tonal variations and all that stuff from YouTube. People are there, they've already made the videos, so go learn. Like I said, it's only going to help you. That would be my best solid advice. Just watch and learn, ask questions. Don't be afraid to ask questions. I've seen them over a year. I know that's not very much, but I've seen the micro portraits healed over a year, and they look just fine. I've been tattooing 20 years, so I have a general grasp on how things are going to heal. But I cannot wait till these tattoos are 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years old, so I can post those up online and say, I told you so. Again, I think it just takes, if you're experienced and you know what you're doing, you shouldn't have a problem with it. You just have to get the ink in the skin, Don't do drugs and stay in school. No, I don't know.